So the big interview is back with another cracking guest. A guy I like, a guy who's been helpful to me during my career, but a guy who, more importantly, scored the winning goal in Arsenal's last European trophy lift, who twice won the Golden Boot for being the top scorer in the English Premier League. It's Alan Smith. During this conversation, held in beautiful circumstances in Sopwell House under glaring sun right next to Arsenal's training ground at Colney, we talk about why Alan claims, powerfully, that 1989 last match of the season, victory at Anfield by George Graham's Arsenal, in which Alan scored and set up Mickey Thomas, is the single most iconic moment in English League football. Is he right? He talks about George Graham, the man who he says had the players a little bit frightened, but who changed all of them. We're going to give you a first-hand explanation of how the Scot held that Arsenal squad in thrall. And then, do you remember the Battle of Old Trafford? No, not Martin Keown, not Ruud van Nistelrooy, Nigel Winterburn, Gary Pallister, Brian McClare, guest on the big interview, Anders Limpar boasting that he'd punched somebody and drawn blood. It's all here. This is the big interview with Alan Smudger Smith, helping him promote his entertaining autobiography, Heads Up. Have a listen. In our case, ears on. It's the big interview, and the sound you just heard was me putting down my mug of tea. But the sound you missed just before Neil pressed record was Alan Smith and Neil saying, "Lovely day. Isn't it gorgeous? It's a scorcher." And that's my first question, Alan Smith. Welcome to the big interview.
Thank you.
I nearly said, aha, there. It was very Partridge, wasn't it? It was. Knowing me, knowing you. Everybody who listens to the big interview knows that I get a bit soppy about things. And here we are sitting in St Albans in Sopwell House, right next door to where, for a number of years, you trained. A beautiful part of the world where you must have, in your broadcasting career, I suppose, come and waited for Arsene Wenger for his interminably delayed press conferences. Generally what I'm saying, with the green trees, the beautiful grass, the sunshine, England's lovely. There was a time when, never mind playing for Arsenal and earning good money and scoring goals and being famous, actually coming to work in this part of the world must have been the best thing.
Well, when you're in that bubble and you've done it all your life, I suppose you don't tend to appreciate it as much as somebody coming in on their first day might feel. But I never lost sight of the fact that it was a fantastic job I was doing, and you were getting paid to stay fit, to play the game that you've always loved, to spend hours and hours with like-minded souls, teammates, friends, just having a laugh every day, as you say, out in the fresh air. I never became that blasé that it was just, another day in the office, so to speak. It was always a good day when you got up. I mean, well, that's not strictly true, but when things were going well, it was always a good day, getting up, going into training, seeing the boys. It was brilliant.
So the things that I was getting soppy about, like the smell in the cut grass, which still just does it for me.
Yeah.
But also the sound of the boots on the hard floor or whatever, that I accept you take for granted. But I knew that you would reach for the dressing room camaraderie because I know that you were fit for it and you had fun. We're talking at the moment about your Arsenal experiences, not Alvechurch or Leicester or England, but if you were appreciating the camaraderie and the team spirit, whatever, you were in with a bunch of blokes I think were quite different from you.
Well,
the way that Arsenal life was lived then was miraculous, and I'm not breaking any stories because everybody's written the books. Tony's written his book. Mercer's book I had to put down because it was driving me mad with worry for him. Like, don't do it, Paul. Don't do it.
Yeah.
With each turning page.
He's got a few. Which book? He's got a few. You say they're different, but there's always a broad cross-section of characters in the dressing room. You've obviously got people like Tony and Mercer who got into trouble with drinking and betting and what have you, but then there was somebody like David Rocastle who, we were quite similar in many ways. We were family guys, and we used to love spending time with our kids and together as two families. And there's all sorts of characters in the dressing room, and those personalities don't always come out to the public eye, perhaps. But my upbringing and my kind of route into the game was a bit different to most in terms of went to university, or Polytechnic as it was then, Coventry Poly. I wouldn't say I came in late. I mean, I became a pro at 18, which isn't mega late, but, I'd had that education beforehand. So people always used to say, if there was something they wanted to find out, ask Smudge, he'll know. It was one of them, he's clever, which isn't always the case. But, I was different from that point of view, but, we've all got something very big in common, and that's our love of football.
But the wildness.
Yeah.
I think I'm asking, when we're here partly to talk about the fact that you've written your own autobiography without a ghost, and it's called Heads Up. Now, in it, what comes out is that you're quite happy to have been a guy known for reason and common sense and to try and avoid controversy and all that. There's a cross-section in a dressing room as well established. How does it work? How does it blend? When some of them are living in the most extreme way that successful footballers have ever lived, because the miracle of it is, Merce and Tony and, maybe the back four, Ray Parle, all of them said we lived hard, but set huge standards on the pitch, made history. In the modern day, people would say this is impossible, but you were living a much more moderate life. You seem to be, in your personality, a much different kind of guy. Why doesn't it clash? Why wasn't there a point within the dressing room where you're like, well, this isn't me, or why were they so accepting of you living a quite different life? It's the knitting together that I like and I'd like to understand.
They never questioned my lifestyle, and I never questioned theirs, really. I mean, Merce, I only found this out recently. He was going to see a psychiatrist, and he was at the height of his drink and gambling problems, and he sat down on the couch and said, I just want to be like Alan Smith. I just want to go into training, have a shower, go straight home to my family. That's what Smudge does. I want to be like him. And I wasn't aware of that at the time.
No.
There were some lads that were like me. Nigel Winterburn, Lee Dixon, they went back to the family. So it's not like, I'm apart from the crowd or anything like that. We all got along great. That was a feature of our time back then. Different characters, but we respected each other because we were all doing jobs on the pitch. If you weren't pulling your weight, if you had a different attitude in terms of your goals, if you're a bit selfish, then you would become ostracised. But if you had that team ethos, there was no problem at all. That's just the way it was. And the drinking thing, it was a culture back then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It wasn't something you thought, wow, he's going out for a few pints, he shouldn't be doing that. It's what happened. You didn't do it the night before a game, or you shouldn't have. Maybe some of the lads did occasionally.
Across English football, people did. Yes, we know they did.
Yeah, that would have been the exception to the rule, though. The Tuesday club at Arsenal was quite a famous institution. We'd do a physical at Highbury if we hadn't got a midweek game, and run around the track, run up to the top of the North Bank, see who won, into the gym, five-a-side, get our gear on and into town. Of course, you had Wednesday off, come in Thursday, sweat it out, prepare on a Friday for Saturday. Unless the lads overstepped the mark and George Graham would get some letters from somebody complaining, as long as they were back at it Thursday, he wouldn't ask questions.
So it's something that I argued with over the many years of Walter Smith when I was beginning my career in Scotland. Just take the Tuesday club. Now everybody says, and for many years, don't drink, eat differently, stretch, relax, yoga, meditation, all the things, sports science everywhere. And clearly, for the state of your body, for recuperation from injury, that drinking heavily, and for stamina and games and body shape and all that wasn't great. But is it a fair principle to say that, because you used the word team ethos and then moved on, saying there was one, but how does one grow? How does it happen? Because we've both seen very many groups of sports people who are fractured in their relationships. Yours wasn't like that. So the Tuesday club concept, where everybody's like working hard on a Tuesday, going, there's a bevy around the corner, I'm going to go out and have an outrageous laugh with my mates while the rest of the world is working. Was that a central motor in the success as well?
Perhaps.
The team that drinks together wins was one of the phrases back then.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, not everybody used to go out. We had some founder members, you'd know the names, Tony and Baldy Merce, those kind of characters, and then I'd dip in and out, as would some of the other lads. So it's not like it was 15 of us rampaging through London or anything like that. And that was fine, We accepted that some people were different to others. And I mean, in terms of the group, sometimes it clicks like that. It's not something that anybody's worked on. The chemistry's right. And I mean, I think George Graham played a big part in keeping us all together and emphasising the fact that you have to work for your mate. You have to back him up when he's in trouble. And that's why he never minded seeing us go out, I think. He was in that dressing room, he saw us getting our gear on. Yeah. And, I think he'd say, have a good time, lads, just don't overdo it.
George is now, known for being more urbane, always dressed impeccably, very elegant man in his attitudes and his words, likes his tennis, been retired for a little while. But for those who are listening to this and don't know enough about George, explain two things about him. First of all, in what way was it possible for a manager then to kind of terrorise a group of grown men? And secondly, in London, when I was still in this country working, we used to go out to Langens, it was one of his favourite places, and Langens would always have to add onto the bill the tablecloths, because George would get a pen or a pencil out and the pepper pots, and he'd be drawing arrows and the pepper pots would move.
He still goes there. I saw him not long ago in there.
He loves it there, and they love him there. And it's great when you go in there, like the world comes to pay homage. It's fabulous to be there. And the big old picture of, I don't know if it's still there, old picture of Stamford Bridge in the days when it was the dog track, when of course George had been playing there then. And
But the mad thing is, Frank McClintock always tells the famous story when they were in the dressing room after training and they were talking about the game on the Saturday and they were talking about different tactical things they might try, who's going to do what, and he'd go, put the ball away, lads, let's go and have a drink. That was George back then, and Frank says, I cannot believe he became the person and the manager that he became. His personality or his kind of goals totally changed.
You attribute a bit of that to Terry Venables, his best mate, who they got, I think Terry got married on the morning of a North London derby with George as his best man, and then George took him to Highbury and Arsenal to Spurs 4-0. So there's a wedding.
Changes.
There's a wedding present. Thought you might like that one. Yeah, you attribute that change in George partially to Terry.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I wasn't around at the time, but I think George needed the work, and he went to QPR, and then he got the taste for it. He got the bug, and developed from there, and became very serious about it. So he knew what it was like to be somebody who liked to drink, because he was that person. But he became a kind of a furious worker. His work ethos, go back to that phrase, was phenomenal. Very dedicated, very single-minded in becoming a success as a manager. Amazing. For those who knew him as a player, which I didn't, but to see that change, it must have been quite something.
Well, he was called Stroller famously because he would stroll around the midfield dishing out elegant passes. But do what Andy Melvin taught you at Sky and tell us what we can't see. Describe George working for him, and how does one man hold a firm group of footballers, grown-up, boisterous, hard-nosed men in such a grip?
He was just one of those people that did have an aura about him. You were instantly respectful and a bit frightened of him. That's just the way he was. I suppose you can't manufacture that. It comes naturally. He was a manager that kept his distance from the players. He was never going to socialise, become mates with us. He once made the mistake of walking into a bar in Puerto Banús in Spain, and we were all up on stage singing, and he did a quick about turn. And
what were you singing?
Oh, Georgie, Georgie, Stand By Me, the Benny King classic.
And you'd chosen the manager's name to...
We must have been talking about him, and one or two of us were maybe in danger of being dropped, and we got up on stage and we started singing Georgie, Georgie, Stand By Me.
Georgie, Stand By Me.
That's it.
He must have been really pleased when he came in and heard that nod.
Yeah, because he normally did his homework. He'd normally know exactly where we were going, and he'd know where he was going, probably somewhere nicer. So he made a mistake that day. But he would always keep arm's length with... The only person he really got closer to was Tony Adams as his young captain. He gave him a little bit more rope than he might have given us. But he was somebody, that you definitely respected. If he gave you a bollocking, you knew about it. You wanted to please him. He was one of those managers. Why did you want to please him? Because you'd get a little pat on the back. Because he set such high standards, if you pleased him, you knew you'd reach those standards. And he set those standards every day of the week in training. And he did famously say, lads, looking back at the end of your careers, you'll think you haven't always enjoyed working with me, but you'd be pleased that you've put the work in, because it would have been successful. You can look at the medals. You know, along the way, it might be a pain in the arse, what I ask you to do, you know, how hard I am on you, but at the end of it, you've got these medals and, more importantly, these memories to show for it. And he was right.
Can I venture? Were the majority of you better footballers for him, for his presence?
I don't know. He certainly pushed us hard. You could argue he restricted some of us. I mean, you'd ask the defenders under Arsene Wenger, all of a sudden they're dribbling up with the ball at the feet into the opposition's half. They might say George held them back a little bit. And it was always a thing with me, don't lose the ball, Alan, don't lose the ball. So sometimes you get a little bit tense about that. Oh, bloody hell, I've got to keep hold of this. And that was counterproductive at times. So there was that side of him sometimes that didn't give you the freedom to express yourself. But on the other side of the coin, you were in a team structure, you knew exactly what was expected, and that gave you confidence when you went out onto the pitch.
You were winning.
We knew we were a good team. We knew what we had to do individually and collectively. And you go out onto the pitch thinking, yeah, we're better than this lot. You know, we're more together, we're better players, we've got more about us.
I used to work in London, and I'm not a particularly aggressive Scot, or I don't have a particularly Scottish accent, but very many senior people in England seem to think that the Scottish accent is a fabulous work tool. Somehow it adds an edge. You said that maybe some players, that George could frighten some people. Now, I'm sure George didn't make a habit of belting people. So, did his Scottishness play a part in what you talked about there?
Yeah, Lanarkshire tones, weren't they? Which were suited to oratory, really. I mean, he did give some great speeches in his time. He could find the right words, and also the way he put those words over in that accent, it just sounded right. I mean, Anfield was a great example. When we got docked 2 points after the Old Trafford brawl, was another great example when he called us together at the training ground and just emphasised that we'd got to behave in the right manner. We were representing ourselves, our families, our football club. He said everyone out there wants to see us fail, and he introduced that siege mentality, which, you know, isn't a new thing for managers, but it was a rousing speech. It was filmed, actually, and it's on the Arsenal archives. It went into folklore almost, because there were shots of us sat there listening to him and looking up at him and nodding away. He got across what we had to do from then on. You know, we'd been docked 2 points, which was unprecedented, hasn't happened since, and he gave us the determination to kick on again.
I don't want to go to this incident, but as a journalist, you're at Old Trafford for another bumpy Arsenal United match, and you use your journalistic skills to describe it as you see it. You're true to your profession. I'm aware that in telling this story, you've referred to something that helped build to Anfield, where we're going to go, and we're going to put down Sergio Aguero in the process. More of that later, listeners. Tell people about the Old Trafford brawl. Tell people about why there was 2 points docked.
Right.
There's a lot of listeners who simply don't know what you're referring to.
No, quite. A thing started in '88, quarter-final of the FA Cup. Manchester United came to Highbury. We ended up beating them 2-1. I got the opening goal in front of the North Bank, which was a great day for me. I'd been struggling a bit. But they won a penalty towards the end. Brian McClare was going to take it. Now, Nigel Winterburn, I don't know if he'd been at him all through the match, but before he took the penalty, he was in his ear, whispering sweet nothings. And then Brian missed, and then Nigel's gone back for more, giving him stick. So that didn't end well. And it rumbled on, really, until that day at Old Trafford, the 1991 season. So the ball's played into me. Gary Pallister has climbed over the top, headed it down towards Dennis Irwin, and Nigel's ploughed into Irwin with a shocking challenge, really. And then McClare's come in and kicked Nigel on the floor, and then all hell broke loose. And I looked at the YouTube clip whilst I was writing the book just to make sure I got all the facts right. And it's funny because I'm kind of strolling in a reasonable manner to act as peacemaker. From behind, Rocky and Mickey Thomas, you know, two South London lads that don't take any shit, they've sprinted past and started throwing punches, you know, before I could even doomed Henry Kissinger bit. And they were proper punches as well.
Yeah.
Anders Limpar came in afterwards and he was absolutely buzzing because he said, I caught Brian McClare behind the ear, he was bleeding, So there were some proper punches thrown, and the FA had obviously studied it in detail and decided we were more to blame than United. They got docked 1 point, us 2. Yeah, it was a heck of a little scramble. I mean, sometimes you have melees and it's all people shoving people and trying to split them up. But the 2 managers, George and Fergie, came up the touchline to get involved to try and calm things down, which in itself was a bit unusual. So it was quite a big event at the time. It's
sort of because I'm aware that one of the things I do, and I'm a bit hypocritical, I eulogise, I get very romantic about the brand of football I see in Spain, but the beauty of football. Football is intelligence, it's the technique. We're going to come to that with you, particularly again back to Anfield. But I grew up with football, even the great players, not the cloggers, were handy, and there was an edge of, if not violence, certainly confrontation. You sorted things out on the pitch. As a fan, I liked watching a bit of that. It was part of my entertainment. Now, it would be like turning up naked in church on a Sunday. It's like, no way. There's nothing further from the brand image of the Premier League and also what Sky likes to show. And, it just wouldn't be tolerated, not because grown men shouldn't be brawling, but because it tarnishes the image. Well, I can't speak for you, but I am asking. A bit of that every now and again was part of what made me love football.
And fans still love to see a good tackle, don't they? And maybe they like to see one of their own players get one over on the opposition, maybe do him, I mean, I always maintain that the dirtiest players were the best players, weren't they? Because they were the cleverest ones. They could always get there first and know what they were doing. I mean, somebody like Vinnie Jones has gone down as this hard man, but you could see him thundering along 10 yards away and you could avoid this tackle if you had anything about you. But somebody like Graham Souness, I mean, I remember first playing against him at Anfield, and I've received the ball and I've seen him coming kind of, but I couldn't avoid it. He's gone over the top of the ball, straight into my shin pads with his 6 studs, and I could feel my shin bending inwards. And he just, gave me a growl. People like Johnny Giles.
Johnny's still hard as nails.
Just such dirty players, but brilliant players.
Johnny was a very good footballer.
Yeah.
For people who don't know him, Leeds, Man United, West Brom manager, Ireland international, great football brain.
Yeah.
Hard as nails.
Exactly.
And he would say the same.
I suppose a little bit more up to date. Dennis Bergkamp had that side to him. He could top you if he was of a mind to, and there weren't many better out there than the Iceman. So it is an aspect that's gone out of the game. Obviously now we want to sanitise it a bit more. Health and safety, endangering an opponent and all the rest of it. There is a danger that it goes too far.
There is, isn't there? I'm not saying we have, but that simmering sense of aggrievement and aggression that doesn't end in broken bones or people's career being ended or any of that nonsense. I think we need an edge to football.
Oh, I mean, I looked at Marcus Rashford sending off the other day, and I thought, for goodness sake, he's going to miss 3 games for that.
For that.
When Phil Bardsley did something very similar. And I just think he's not endangering the safety of opponent. It's a bit of aggression. Yeah. That's all it is. It's just he's reacting to something that Bardsley did. Why send him off for that?
I think one of the things, apart from me, I'll now stop sort of trying to endorse sanitised violence, but we forget a lot about what we ask of footballers. We ask them to be trained to an inch of their lives. We almost brainwash them with the coach like George or whoever you might be working for into, this is everything this week, this is so important, you must win this, don't let us down, you've got to produce week after week, day after day, year after year. That changes you. That's a form of brainwashing. Send them out into contact sport, drama happens, things go against you, fan yells at you, yells about your family, or somebody does you on your ankle, whatever, and then there's absolutely no room for bursting emotions or a retaliation or a 3.5 minute loss of temper. That's not right. It's not human to think that.
That's where I think the people making the rules don't have that understanding. They are trying to clean it up. They think they're doing it for the better, but I think they just have to be careful.
What would you tinker with to just draw things back a little bit if you had the rules or the laws or the punishments in your hands?
It's that understanding of a tackle sometimes when you're just trying to recover the situation, you slightly heavy touch, you dive in because it's instinctive, you're trying to win the ball again, and you catch the lad on the ankle, but it wasn't a malicious action.
No intention.
No.
It's about, I can correct that mistake.
You can't hold yourself back in that instance, but you're getting punished for something you can't do anything about.
I hope I'm going to skip away from this back in time, because if I'm right in my chronology, that Old Trafford bust-up probably was part of what drew you together again and pushed you on towards a double. But before that, what would you call Anfield in 1989? Your contention in Heads Up, in the book that we've got in front of us, where I'm pinching some of my questions from, your contention is that it is what? The single most iconic moment in English football?
Yeah, I think that's right, yeah. I can't think. I mean, obviously, Aguero's goal for Manchester City is the second best in Premier League terms.
That's great. And would you like to reach over and pat him on the head patronising as well? Yeah, second best.
I mean, I don't see why there's any reasons for argument. It was a standalone game. It had been put to the end of the season because of Hillsborough. We were due to play Liverpool, in April. So after Hillsborough, that game got put to the end. Everybody else had finished. So it was a standalone game on a Friday night between the two teams, the only two teams capable of winning the title. So that on his own takes it away from Manchester City, QPR, who were floundering at the bottom of the Premier League. Liverpool, you have to remember what a team they were then. Never mind about rarely losing at Anfield. To lose 2-0 was almost unheard of, or to lose by 2 goals. World-class players, Barnes, Rush, Hansen, Beardsley, Aldridge. Hell of a team. So to go there and to win, and then to get the second all-important goal in the final seconds, it was just the stuff of film scripts. Funnily enough, a couple of films have been made about it. Fever Pitch and recently 89, the kind of docu-film. It was incredible. It was special. Everybody does tend to remember, if they've got any connection with football, where they were that night. It was a bit of a JFK moment. And that's why I do think it's the most famous moment in English football history. Aguero's was incredible drama, but the overall context, who they were playing, and I just don't think it gets anywhere near.
I think you probably won your argument there. Let's unpick it a little bit. I don't know if you're able to remember, it's a much more sombre question, but did you carry flowers out that night yourself?
Yes, we did, yeah. I think it was Ken Fryer, our managing director's idea.
I was going to ask whose idea it was.
Yeah, I think it was his. So we all had a bouquet of flowers, and we went to 4 corners of the ground and just chose someone to hand those flowers to. I gave mine to a lady on the opposite side. We got a huge round of applause for that, and then we got back into our positions, and the huge roar goes up because it's game time. People have kind of put Hillsborough to the backs of the minds, and now we want to see our team win the title.
Now's a time for honesty. As much as you believed in yourselves, as much as you'd achieved quite special things as a team by then, did you believe, going into Anfield, you personally, that you were going to win by 2 clear goals and win the title?
It was a strange one, because we went up there in a very relaxed manner. It was what have we got to lose type attitude. And when we went out there, George, going back to his team talk, he pumped us up, cleared our minds of what exactly the challenge was. And I was confident we could do it. And even as the match wore on, as the cop were whistling for the final whistle, I still thought we could do it, which was a bit weird.
That's truly your thought pattern back then?
And a few of my teammates felt the same. I know that. I don't know whether we were deluded or whatever. Coming in at half-time, we were disappointed because we'd hardly had an effort on goal. I think only Baldy's header, that was about it, and we've trooped in, heads down, but George has lifted us saying, brilliant lads, perfect, we've kept the clean sheet, that's the most important thing. Now we want to push on a bit, get that first goal. They'll be even more nervous. They're not themselves as it is. They'll be even more nervous, and we'll get that second goal. he was confident. Whether truly inside him he was, he claims he was confident, thought we'd actually win by 3. But he certainly infused that confidence into us. And we didn't go out thinking, oh, we've got to get 2 goals, we've got to be adventurous and take risks and that.
No.
That's the beauty of his team talks.
He'd broken it down for you mentally.
Yeah.
Get a foothold, consolidate that.
Don't feel you've got to, throw men forward. Don't feel that. Keep a clean sheet. It was kind of keep the situation simmering.
That's what I like about coaching, because that's why you have a conductor in front of an orchestra. Everybody can play their instrument. But it'll be slightly out of tempo, or it won't be as crisp unless the conductor's saying, not now, now. And he doesn't have to teach you much on that day. But as human beings, not as footballers, you have to make sure your mind isn't clouded with the wrong ideas. Charge. Just that little bit of... I'm wondering on tape whether it sounds really simple to listeners now. But it's not, to be that sure about the manner to win, to convince your guys to do it your way, and then for it to come off, which is... I want to come back to George after this night and Anfield and talk about managers and coaches who tell you something, and then it happens, and the sort of chemical reaction that has in a footballer's brain when a manager says, it's going to be like this if you do this. Guardiola has that at Barcelona and Bayern Munich, Manchester City. But picking this night apart at Anfield, the first goal, you score it. And it comes from a free kick. As Arsenal are facing, comes in from the right. Maybe I'm wrong, and I'm presuming when you're writing your autobiography, you've gone back and looked at this game and the goal a little bit, so I'm not fishing in an empty pool. Tony Adams' run is quite strange and comical, and what was going on there? And not taking anything away from Arsenal's achievement, what was the Liverpool defence doing there? That was like primary school.
You say that, but
no,
it was a well-rehearsed move that
okay.
totally outwitted them.
Come on.
Well, I mean, don't ask me what Tony was doing. He veered off script by quite some distance.
I mean, that was an Olympic sprint he does. He's obviously having fun as well.
I mean, I'd like to say he threw himself at the ball, but he was nowhere near the ball. But it was a routine that we had practiced, till we were blue in the face on the training ground, and it never used to work on a match day. And we'd go, oh, Gaffer, do we have to do this again? It never works. But, if that free kick was on the right, Nigel would swing one in. If it was on the left, maybe Brian Marwood with his right foot would swing one in. And there'd be me, Tony and Baldy. One of us, probably Baldy, would peel around the back. Me and Tony would attack the ball. On the night, as you say, Tony just threw himself in mid-air. He
started 15, 20 metres back, hasn't he?
Yeah, and he was kind of just a decoy. Not that he did it intentionally, but it just enabled me. Perhaps it created some space for me to slip in.
It did. That's what I'm saying. The Liverpool guys, as brilliant as they were, are standing looking around going, well, what's happened? You're allowed, it's a nice header, the delivery's fine, it's 1-0. It's going to make you part of the most historic moment in English football, but if you defend like that, George would have taken you into London Colney the next day and shot you all.
Well, I think that was probably reflective of how Liverpool were that night. They weren't quite themselves. We sensed that after about 10 minutes. Because, if you go into a game knowing you can lose 1-0, it can do funny things to your mind, perhaps, whereas our minds were pretty clear. So that was an advantage for us, I think. We pounced on that, the fact that Liverpool weren't at the best that night. Obviously, the whole Hillsborough thing, the number of games they'd had to play leading up to the finale would have played a part as well. I mean, we played quite a few too, but maybe on another night they would have defended that free kick better.
Do you remember the ball in the air?
Yeah.
Am I being fanciful, or do you remember the ball in the air coming towards you?
Yeah, I do. As I say, I saw it coming towards me, and I've just tried to get something on it and help it on its way. I've gone for the left-hand corner and, worked perfectly. Got a good connection on it, helped it on its way. Whacked into Steve Staunton on the follow-through and kind of gone to celebrate in the far corner with the fans.
Was it natural, all natural Alan Smith, or some of the tuition that Stroll or George gave you in heading, which most people won't know about?
No, George did give me quite a few tips on heading. I mean, I was a good header of the ball when I came to the club, but he was particularly good as a player, and he used to take me through some routines and the style of heading,
You've just done it there.
He was like a chicken, the old chicken neck going backwards and forwards, and he'd always blow through his lips like that, head it like this, Alan. Maker's name. Keep your eyes open. Always look at the maker's name as it's coming towards you. And of course, we'd all take the piss out of him behind his back. But we also knew he knew what he was on about. And he demonstrated as well, because he was a young man then, really.
Yeah.
Early 40s, was he? And he demonstrated heading the ball, and he could still do it. But, you know, that was always one of my fortes. That's
Just
why I've called the book Heads Up.
You guided it in.
Yeah.
You don't just, if you're trying to get something, but in the end you actually guide it into that bottom right.
There's different types of headers, aren't there? But it was kind of, because it was an in-swinger, it was almost swinging away from me. So it wasn't a header you could get some power on and really thud it. It was a helping it on its way type. It was a
billiard shot. It was a nice glance. I really liked it. But I still think, again, and you can just tell me I'm stupid, but I think your part in the second goal, from the way I look at football, was one to be much more proud of, in my opinion. Because you talked about George saying, don't lose the ball, Alan. You know, don't give it away, hold it up. And maybe that restricted you. In the book, and today, you'll often use phrases about being bored or laborious or not seeing the point or whatever, and maybe it was natural, maybe you're going to do it anyway without being coached by George. And that ball comes down, Arsenal's right. You control it. The control itself is exquisite, but the brain's working and your little, I know where Mickey Thomas is and I know what I'm going to do with this. And although Liverpool still have to make a mistake for him to get through and score, the little take and lay off, time it and put the ball right where it needs to be for him. You can't have done many more precise things in your career.
No, I think if there's one moment in my career that I had to pick as the best, that would be it. Because everything was perfect.
Yeah.
The touch was perfect and the little flick, because I had to do it so quickly. And that was me at my best. You know, I was always known for a silky soft touch. A lot of people thought I was left-footed, because I used to practice as a kid so much with my left foot, controlling it off the brick wall at the side of our mum and dad's house. And I naturally would take it in with my left. Almost that was a softer foot to control it with than my right. If I had to take a penalty, I'd take it with my right. But it came in perfectly. Lee fizzed it in, to be fair. So I had to take a chance on the turn. And luckily it worked. And it's just so pleasing on a night where it matters so much that you have a good game, that you do what you want to do and you respond to the challenge, you step up. And that's gratifying looking back that, you know, I was able to produce something approaching my best that night. But yeah, that moment, it probably is the highlight.
You said Iceman about Bergkamp, didn't you, before? It was Bergkamp-esque.
Well, I mean,
I would
never
serious.
include myself in the same sentence.
I'm not talking about across a career, but that was. You know, if he'd done that, he'd feel the same about it as you do, I think.
Yeah.
I think technically that's how gifted that moment was. Also, the brain's whirring all the time. Maybe you tell me that you didn't have to think, that it was instinctive. I don't know, but, you know, your brain's working. It wasn't just technique that made that happen.
Maybe a bit of panic as well, I don't know. The fact I thought, I've just got to turn first time here because the whistle's going to go. And then seeing the flash of yellow and blue jersey in my peripheral vision, being Mickey making a storming run, just flicked it through. Yeah, I mean, I'd had a great season that year. I obviously ended up winning the Golden Boot. I was flying in terms of confidence, so I felt I could try things like that, and I was confident they'd come off.
There are only 3 modern day players who won the Golden Boot more than you. Shearer and Henry being 2 of them. And there's only 6 guys ever in the history of this division that won the Golden Boot more than you did. And before I talk about your goal scoring, I'll ask you about your goal scoring again. Can I go back in that theme again? If it's a waste of time, tell me. But we in this series, we've often talked to footballers and coaches about belief systems and teaching and communication. And when I began this series, I talked too much about Barcelona because it's my reference point. I've lived there for 17 years and I've been lucky enough to be shown a lot by the players in the club. And that. But when they began to talk about the great footballers who won under Pep Guardiola at Barcelona, they began to talk about it's ludicrous. He tells us what to do. He tells us why we've got to do that. He tells us what will happen if we do it, and it does. And therefore, we just follow. It's like a cult. And George, it seems to me, reading your book and talking today, and also listening to George over the years, it feels as if George had something about that.
I mean, much different to
Yeah.
Guardiola, I would imagine.
He didn't tell you, he didn't say to you, do this and this will happen. And for example, it must have seemed when he indoctrinated the defensive system, not just the back four, about what to do, and then it was always 1-0 to the Arsenal. It must have seemed like, well, he's a guru. Everything he says happens, so we'll do it.
It all came from hard work, didn't it? Obviously, the back four, the number of hours they would practice on that training ground, the team shape that we would go through, so we all knew our individual roles. You didn't have to think about it really, in a way. So that's where George's football wasn't so much off the cuff. Certainly wasn't off the cuff. It was quite regimented, but in a good way. We did have players that could express themselves as long as they did it in the right areas, the likes of Rocky and Merce, top skill, flair players. But with George, he knew what he wanted from us, he knew exactly what he wanted, and he felt that would be successful. And of course, once it was successful, he gains more belief and we gain more belief from it.
Is that drilling? I've often thought that, Tony called his first book Addicted. And I think it helped George to have somebody with an addictive personality to train it over and over and over and over again and do it right and do it right and do it right. And I think that Tony's leadership and his football skills and his athleticism aside, I think it actually helped that he had a very addictive personality.
Don't get me wrong, the lads would moan about it. Oh, we're not doing defensive shape again, are we? And it'd be me and Merce and Brian Marwood, Rocky trying to break them down. And we'd all have a good moan that, oh God, again, this is the third time this week. But of course, when you go out on a Saturday, on a match day, and you've got that knowledge in you that we know what to do here, and it gives you so much confidence. And that back four would tell you, it became second nature, doing what they didn't know, almost what they were doing, covering each other, how they were in relation to each other. And that there's no secret to it. It is hard work, and the talent of a great coach.
That was part one. Hope you enjoyed it. On Monday, there really are special things to come. Difficult things. I had no idea about the way in which Alan Smith had to not only wrestle with making a partnership with Ian Wright, but how much he suffered in failing to do that. It stays with him, and this is the first time I think he's really talked about it in some depth. It also accounts for the way he felt so down for nearly 3 years towards the end of his career. We talk about the way in which footballers are not held to the same standards as ordinary people, and therefore their problems, their mental health issues, their emotional worries can go completely unnoticed and untouched. But the pleasant side of part two will include how it was at Arsenal. Arsenal have only won 2 European trophies, can you believe that? How they did it the last time? Well, Monday, Alan Smith will tell you.